The Galactic Council Chamber of Etherian Prime was never silent. Not truly. Even in its lowest activity cycle, the chamber held the hum of translation fields, the soft crackle of dimensional stabilizers, and the constant movement of hundreds of species exchanging power, trade, and threats disguised as diplomacy. But that day, it fell silent. Not gradually. Not respectfully. Instantly. 500 delegates from 72 advanced civilizations stopped speaking at the same time, as if an unseen signal had cut through the chamber and seized every mind in unison. At the center platform stood Ambassador Threx Kai of the Zephyrian Empire. His towering form cast a long shadow across the crystalline floor. Black scales absorbed the chamber light instead of reflecting it, making him appear like a void given shape. His 4 arms rested calmly at his sides, but the tension in his claws betrayed impatience rather than fear. He had no reason for fear. Fear was for species who did not hold fleets capable of sterilizing worlds. He stepped forward once. The sound of his armored foot striking the crystal platform echoed across the entire chamber. "I have received authorization from the Imperial Conclave," he began, voice amplified through every translator node in the hall. "The Zephyrian Empire hereby claims jurisdiction over the Outer Rim world designated Earth." A ripple moved through the chamber. Not outrage. Not protest. Interest. That was worse. Because interest from the Council usually meant a feeding frenzy of opportunistic expansion. Kai continued, enjoying the attention. "This world is unaligned, unprotected, and technologically insignificant. Their species has not achieved faster-than-light travel, nor do they possess planetary defense systems capable of resisting orbital bombardment." A few younger delegates leaned forward. Older ones did not move at all. They simply watched him. That silence should have warned him. But arrogance rarely listens to silence. "The Zephyrian fleet has already entered transit lanes toward the Sol system," he said. "In 10 standard cycles, the planet will be under Imperial control. Resistance, if any, will be statistical noise." A faint chuckle escaped one of the supporting officers behind him. The sound spread. Not loudly. Not openly. But enough. Enough for confidence to settle into the room like poison. A Novari delegate raised a hand hesitantly. Their voice was soft, almost fragile compared to the armored confidence of the Zephyrians. "There are standing non-interference accords regarding that system," the Novari said. "Multiple civilizations have restricted contact with Earth." Threx Kai tilted his head slightly. "Restrictions," he repeated, as if tasting a meaningless word. "On a species that still burns chemical fuel to reach orbit?" A few Zephyrian officers laughed again. The Novari lowered their hand. No one supported them. Not even the council moderators. From the upper tier of the chamber, Ambassador Kethar of the Altarian Republic finally stood. Unlike the Zephyrians, he did not carry visible weapons. He did not need them. His species had long abandoned physical warfare. "You are making a mistake," Kethar said quietly. Kai turned slightly. "Oh." Kethar's expression remained controlled, but his eyes did not. "There are reasons those accords exist," he continued. "Earth is not unimportant. It is monitored, restricted, classified in certain archives." That word shifted the atmosphere. Classified. Now attention sharpened. Even the laughter stopped. Kai's 4 arms folded across his chest. "Classified by whom?" he asked. "The Council has no authority over Imperial acquisitions." A pause. A hesitation from Kethar. That hesitation mattered more than any warning, because it meant even he was unsure how much he was allowed to say. "The first observers," Kethar said finally. The chamber temperature seemed to drop. A few of the oldest delegates shifted slightly in their seats. Not fear. Recognition. But they said nothing. Kai noticed that, and smiled. "The first observers are extinct," he said. No one corrected him. That should have been another warning. Instead, it reinforced his confidence. He stepped forward again, raising his voice. "The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate over empty worlds. We do not fear rumors. We do not bow to outdated protocols written by civilizations that no longer exist." He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he delivered the final strike. "We claim Earth. And we will take it as easily as we take everything else." For a brief moment, the chamber remained still. Then, slowly, conversations resumed. Not loudly, not confidently, but nervously, as if something had been disturbed beneath the surface of reality, and no one was willing to be the first to name it. High above, in the observation tier, an ancient figure watched without moving. Ambassador Nethra of the Siluran Archive Division. Her species was old enough that younger civilizations considered them myth-adjacent. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from age. From memory. She whispered one sentence to herself, so quietly no translator picked it up. "They have chosen Earth again." And far below, Ambassador Threx Kai of the Zephyrian Empire smiled at a galaxy that had just gone silent, and believed it was respect. Not warning. Not fear. Respect. He was wrong. But he would not understand that until it was far too late. The silence did not last. It never did in the Galactic Council. Silence was not natural for beings who had turned diplomacy into a competitive sport and war into a refined science. But something had changed. Whispers began again across the chamber, yet they were different now. Slower. Measured. As if every species was testing the weight of what had just been said. Earth. A primitive world, according to the Zephyrian ambassador. And yet, no one corrected him with confidence. That absence of correction was more dangerous than any accusation. High Chancellor Vorith stood at the central dais, his elongated form barely moving as he activated the archival interface. Light spilled into the air, forming rotating data glyphs that only senior council members could fully interpret. "Before any expansion claim proceeds," he said, voice neutral, "the Council requires verification of compliance with classification boundaries." Threx Kai gave a small impatient gesture. "Then verify," he said. "And be done with it." The Chancellor did not respond immediately. That delay again. Another silence that felt intentional. Finally, he spoke. "Earth is listed under Quarantine Protocol 7. The chamber reacted instantly. Not loudly, but sharply. Delegates straightened. Some leaned back. A few older species stopped breathing altogether. Kai frowned. "Quarantine," he repeated. "Against a pre-FTL civilization?" "Yes," Vorith said. That single word carried weight that the translation systems struggled to compress. Kai's irritation grew. "This is absurd. Quarantine protocols are reserved for biological contamination zones or weapons-grade anomaly species. Are you claiming humans fall into either category?" No answer came immediately. Instead, the Chancellor raised his hand. The chamber dimmed, and the air above the dais changed. A projection formed. At first, it looked like standard classification text. Then the system began to censor itself. Redacted lines filled the space like scars across reality. Entire paragraphs were erased by authority older than most civilizations present. Kai narrowed his eyes. "This is outdated bureaucracy," he said. "Nothing more." But Kethar, still standing from earlier, had not sat down. And now he spoke again. "You should stop talking," he said quietly. Kai turned his head slightly. "Excuse me." Kethar's voice remained calm, but something beneath it had changed. Not fear. Resignation. "The last 3 species that tried to bypass that protocol did not return," Kethar said. A ripple moved through the chamber again. But this time, no one laughed. Kai let out a short, dismissive breath. "Threats," he said. "From a species that refuses to name itself in full records. How convenient." Vorith finally activated the deeper archive layer. The projection shifted. Now it showed fragments of destroyed fleets. Not clean battlefield losses. Erased ones. Ships torn apart in ways that defied standard weapon signatures. Entire armadas recorded as lost without causal explanation. Kai stepped forward slightly. "What is this supposed to be?" he demanded. The Chancellor's voice lowered. "Containment history." The word echoed. Containment. Not war. Not conquest. Containment. A different category entirely. A Novari delegate spoke again, more urgently now. If Earth is under quarantine, then why is it still accessible at all? They asked. Why not simply remove it from navigation maps? Kethar answered without looking at them. Because it is not Earth that is contained, he said. That sentence made the chamber go still again. Kai frowned harder. Then what is contained? He asked. No one answered immediately. Instead, Ambassador Nethra moved for the first time. Slowly, deliberately. Her aged form descended from the observation tier, each step echoing softly through the chamber as attention shifted toward her. Even Kai noticed her now. Something about her presence changed the room. Not authority. History. She stopped near the central platform but did not look at Kai directly. Her gaze remained on the holographic projection. That designation, she said quietly, is not a warning. The Chancellor looked at her. Nethra, he said carefully, you are not cleared for. I was there, she interrupted. The chamber froze again. Even Kai stopped speaking. Nethra's voice remained soft, but it carried weight that bypassed translation systems entirely. I was assigned to the Corax observation fleet, she said, when we first detected the Terran system. A few younger delegates looked confused. Older ones did not. They remembered that name. Corax. The empire that no longer existed in any current territorial map. Nethra continued. They made the same assumptions you are making now, she said, turning slightly toward Kai. Weak species. No interstellar capability. No organized military threat. Kai's posture remained rigid, but his claws had stopped moving. That empire, she continued, had over 250 combat fleets. They believed they were conducting a controlled subjugation operation. A pause. Then her voice lowered further. They never completed it. Silence spread again. This time heavier. Not political silence. Psychological silence. Kethar finally spoke again. You should not proceed with this claim, he said to Kai. Not because of council authority. Because of survival probability. Kai's eyes narrowed. So now it is survival, he said. First quarantine. Now extinction warnings. Tell me, Ambassador Kethar, how many rumors are required to protect a world of Stone Age primitives? Nethra looked at him directly for the first time. And what Kai saw in her eyes was not fear. It was memory refusing to fade. One, she said softly. Kai tilted his head. One what? One incident, she replied. The chamber lighting flickered slightly. Somewhere deep in the council systems, an automatic restriction layer activated, as if reacting to the conversation itself. Nethra continued. And you are standing inside its shadow. For the first time since the session began, Ambassador Threx Kai of the Zephyrian Empire did not immediately respond. Not because he believed her, but because something in her voice did not sound like warning. It sounded like aftermath. And in the Galactic Council, aftermaths were always more dangerous than battles. The chamber lights dimmed further, as if the Council itself was reluctant to expose what came next. Even the automated translation systems slowed their processing cycles, struggling against classification locks that were older than most of the civilizations currently present. Ambassador Nethra stood motionless at the center platform. For a moment, she did not speak. Not because she was unsure, but because speaking it again always felt like reopening something sealed for a reason. Finally, she exhaled. The Terran incident, she said quietly. The words alone changed the atmosphere. Not physically, not visually, but emotionally. Every older delegate in the chamber reacted in subtle ways, shifting posture, avoiding eye contact, lowering their gaze toward their consoles as if reading invisible data. Kai noticed it immediately. That collective reaction. That avoidance. He did not like it. Enough vagueness, he said sharply. If there is an incident, show the data. Show the outcome. I am not here to listen to mythological storytelling. Nethra turned her head slightly toward him, and for the first time, there was something colder in her expression. Not anger. Disappointment. You want data, she said. She raised her hand. The holographic interface responded. The chamber darkened completely. Then the projection formed. At first, It was just a simple system tag. Terran Contact Event. Corax Border Region. Then it expanded. A star map appeared. And on it, a single small marker blinked. Earth's position. But older. Unrefined. Unmonitored. And around it, a web of approaching Corax fleet signatures formed like a tightening net. Kai watched carefully. Standard first contact scenario, he said. A minor skirmish at most. Nethra did not respond. The projection advanced. The Corax fleet moved in. Hundreds of ships. Then thousands. A full containment force. Designed for subjugation, not negotiation. Then the human ship appeared. A small vessel. Fragile by galactic standards. Barely capable of sustained interstellar travel. Designation flickered. UES Endeavor. 37 biological signatures on board. Kai let out a short laugh. One ship, he said. Against a full fleet deployment? This is what you call an incident. No one laughed with him. The projection continued. The Corax opened communication. No response from humans. Then escalation. Weapons discharge. Endeavor disabled. Hull breach detected. Systems failing. Kai nodded. Outcome is obvious, he said. Resistance eliminated. But Nethra whispered one word. No. The projection changed again. This time, internal ship view. And what the Council saw caused the first real shift of discomfort in the chamber. The human crew was not evacuating. They were dismantling their own ship. Not in panic. In precision. Panels torn open. Systems rerouted. Life support converted into reactive explosive matrices. Navigation cores repurposed into targeting guidance. Kai leaned forward slightly now. That was unexpected. The Corax boarding signals intensified. They expected surrender. They received resistance. The projection zoomed further. Human crew members moving through collapsing corridors, sealing bulkheads behind them, improvising weapons from structural metal. Not trained soldiers. Not genetically engineered warriors. Just biological civilians adapting faster than any military doctrine predicted. Kai frowned. This is desperation behavior, he said. Any species does this when cornered. Nethra shook her head slowly. It was not desperation, she said. The projection reached the turning point. The Endeavor, now barely intact, initiated full internal detonation sequencing. But instead of collapsing inward, it expanded outward. A chain reaction of controlled destruction. The ship became a weapon. Not by design. By decision. The Corax fleet responded too late. Vessels began disappearing from the map. Not destroyed in neat combat exchanges. Erased. Fragmented. Spread across space in broken trajectories. Kai's expression tightened slightly. What weapon system caused that? He demanded. No one answered immediately. Because the answer did not exist in conventional classification systems. Nethra finally spoke. They used everything, she said. Every system. Every component. Every fragment of mass they could manipulate. A pause. Then she added the line that changed everything. And when they ran out of weapons. She looked at Kai directly. They became them. Silence. Absolute silence. The projection continued. Corax fleet numbers collapsing. Command structures breaking. Retreat orders failing because communication nodes no longer existed. A species designed for conquest, unraveling against a single damaged human vessel. Kai stepped back slightly now. Not fear. Calculation. That is impossible, he said quietly. One ship cannot erase a fleet of that magnitude. Kethar finally spoke again. We said the same thing, he replied. The projection froze. Final status report appeared. Corax military presence. Terminated. Kai stared at it, still refusing full acceptance. So what happened next? He asked. Nethra's voice lowered again. That, she said, is why Earth is quarantined. She gestured. The projection changed one final time. A void. Where the Corax Empire had once existed. Entire sectors marked as empty. No survivors. No controlled territories. No recovery fleets. Just silence across space. Kai's claws tightened slightly. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that a pre-FTL species destroyed an interstellar empire." Nethra did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at the projection as if remembering something no one else in the room had ever witnessed. "No," she said finally. "They survived one. And that was worse." The Zephyrian War Council did not believe in hesitation. On the warship Shadow Sovereign, Admiral Vexthal stood at the center of the command deck, surrounded by holographic fleet projections that rotated like obedient planets. 400 warships. Each one engineered for dominance. Each one capable of glassing a continental surface in under an hour. And each one, in his mind, already victorious. "System scan complete," his tactical officer reported. "No active defense grids detected. No orbital fortifications. No interstellar-class weapon signatures." Vexthal's mandibles shifted slightly in what his species considered a smile. "Primitive," he said. "Not as insult. As fact." The hologram zoomed in on Earth. A quiet blue sphere suspended in darkness. "Beautiful. Fragile. Atmospheric composition?" he asked. "Breathable for baseline carbon lifeforms," the officer replied. "No evidence of hostile bioengineering. No adaptive planetary shielding. No detected space-based weapons platforms." Vexthal turned slowly toward the viewport. The planet looked still, inactive, unaware. A world that had never been forced to learn what the galaxy truly was. "Such innocence," he said softly. Behind him, Captain's wrath shifted uneasily. "Admiral," she said, "the Council warnings." Vexthal cut her off with a single gesture. "Council warnings are political artifacts," he said. "Old civilizations preserving fear as policy. We are not here to negotiate with superstition." He stepped forward. The fleet expanded across the tactical display behind him, each ship locking into formation. Perfect geometry. Perfect discipline. Perfect inevitability. "Transmit to all vessels," he ordered. His voice hardened. "Commence invasion protocol." Across the fleet, engines flared. Hundreds of warships adjusted trajectory in synchronized motion toward the third planet. Earth. A target with no visible teeth. No visible claws. No visible defense. Captain's wrath hesitated again. "Sir," she said more carefully, "there is still a Council quarantine designation. Level 7 containment classification. That usually implies weakness disguised as mythology," Vexthal finished. He turned toward her fully now. "You are afraid of a world that has not even left its cradle." That silence again. Different from the Council chamber. Here, silence meant obedience under pressure. Zrath lowered her gaze. "Yes, Admiral," she said. The fleet continued its approach. As they crossed deeper into the system, long-range sensors began to refine planetary readings. Still nothing. No orbital defense grids. No planetary shield signatures. No detectable fleet presence. Just scattered radio emissions. Civilization noise. Fragments of communication. Music. Language. Chaos. Vexthal listened to the translated output through the ship's ambient feed. He frowned slightly. "They sound disorganized," he said. "Multiple governments detected," the officer replied. "Over 200 independent governing bodies. No unified planetary command structure." A low chuckle passed through the bridge crew. Even the word was amusing. 200 governments. A species divided against itself. Perfect for conquest. "Any military coordination?" Vexthal asked. "None detected." "Any unified defense doctrine?" "None detected." "Any indication of rapid mobilization?" A pause. Then, "Sir, there are civilian broadcast signals showing mass evacuation drills." Vexthal smiled again. "Preparing for surrender logistics," he said. "Efficient." The fleet reached the system boundary. No resistance. No interception. No warning fire. Nothing. Just silence. And stillness. Captain Wrath looked at the main display again. "Admiral," she said carefully, "it feels wrong." Vexthal did not turn. "It feels unknown," he corrected. "That is not the same thing." Then he gave the final order. "Bring us into orbital dominance position." The war fleet advanced. And Earth, still silent beneath them, continued to rotate as if it had not noticed that a predator had just entered its sky. The moment the Zephyrian fleet crossed into Earth's orbital perimeter, every sensor aboard the Shadow Sovereign recalibrated in real time. Not due to interference, but due to absence. There was nothing to jam, nothing to hide, nothing to resist detection. Captain Wrath leaned over the tactical console, her claws tapping rapidly as data streamed in. "Surface scan complete," she reported. "No orbital defense platforms. No satellite weapon arrays. No active planetary shield grid." A pause. She looked up, uncertain for the first time since the operation began. "Nothing at all," she added. Vexthal stepped closer to the display. The planet rotated slowly beneath them. Blue oceans. White cloud bands. Green landmasses. A living world. Unarmored. "Population density?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion biological signatures," the science officer replied. "Spread across continental landmasses with no apparent centralized clustering for defense coordination." A soft ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. 8 billion. And yet no military structure in orbit. No deterrence. No visible fear response. "Technological level?" Vexthal asked. The display expanded. Red indicators marked human infrastructure. "Industrial civilization," the officer said. "Energy generation primarily chemical and nuclear fission-based. No evidence of quantum field manipulation. No faster-than-light capability. No spaceborne weapon systems detected." Vexthal tilted his head slightly. "So they truly never progressed beyond planetary confinement," he said. "Yes, Admiral." A silence followed. Not the heavy silence of fear, but the comfortable silence of certainty. The kind that precedes execution. Captain Wrath hesitated again. "Sir," she said, "there are satellite networks." "Yes," the science officer confirmed. "Communication and weather observation only. No military signatures." Vexthal studied them. Hundreds of tiny artificial objects orbiting the planet. Harmless. Useful only for information gathering. Not war. Never war. He exhaled slowly. "This is almost disappointing," he said. Behind him, one of the junior officers chuckled. "Primitive civilizations rarely understand escalation thresholds," the officer said. "They likely believe space itself is unreachable for combat." Vexthal nodded once. A reasonable assumption. A fatal one. "Open planetary communication channels," he ordered. Captain Wrath blinked. "Sir." "Broadcast presence," Vexthal repeated. "Let them understand what stands above them." A transmission array activated. The bridge speakers emitted a signal across electromagnetic and quantum bands, translating into whatever primitive systems Earth possessed. Seconds passed. Then, a response. Weak. Distorted. Uncertain. "Unknown ships, this is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourselves." The voice was human. Fragile. Filtered through translation lag. Vexthal leaned slightly forward. So they did have a defense command. How quaint. Captain Wrath looked at the audio feed. "They are requesting identification, Admiral." Vexthal smiled. He stepped forward to the transmitter console himself. "This is Admiral Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire," he said calmly. "You are now under Imperial observation and pending acquisition." A long pause followed. The human voice returned. "We request clarification of your intentions." A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge again. Clarification. As if intent mattered at this scale. Vexthal activated fleet-wide broadcast. "You are surrounded," he said. "Your world is now subject to Imperial claim. You will stand down all planetary activity and await instruction." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, we need time to confer with global leadership. Zrath frowned. Global leadership, she muttered. Vexthal chuckled. They are negotiating internally while orbiting weapons already exist above them, he said. He leaned back. Grant them 1 hour, he said casually. Then begin demonstration strike. The weapons officer hesitated. Target selection, Admiral? Vexthal looked down at the planet. A slow rotation. A living world unaware of its own fragility. Pick a coastal region, he said. Uninhabited if possible. Let them witness precision before extinction. Orders echoed across the fleet. Charging sequences began. Plasma cannons awakened. Orbital rail systems aligned. Bombardment matrices initialized. On Earth, the transmission cut briefly. Then returned. We acknowledge your message, the human voice said. Still calm. Still uncertain. Still unaware. Vexthal smiled. Good, he said softly. Learn quickly. And in the quiet between two civilizations, one preparing to dominate and the other still pretending negotiation mattered, the countdown to first contact had already become something far more irreversible. The hour passed quickly. Too quickly for civilizations that believed time belonged to them. On the bridge of the Shadow Sovereign, the atmosphere had shifted from anticipation to certainty. There was no debate anymore. No hesitation. Only execution. Captain Zrath stood at her console, watching the final countdown reach its last segments. Demonstration strike window is open, she reported. Vexthal did not move from his command seat. Begin, he said. Across the fleet, weapon systems ignited in synchronized silence. 3 orbital plasma lances from the Shadow Sovereign itself aligned with the designated target zone on Earth's western hemisphere. A remote oceanic island. Uninhabited. Or so their sensors believed. Target locked, the weapons officer confirmed. Fire. Space itself lit up. 3 concentrated beams of high-energy plasma tore through orbit, accelerating toward the planet with surgical precision. On every Zephyrian vessel, auxiliary displays zoomed in to observe impact. This was not war. This was demonstration. Control. Teaching. Correction. But Earth did not behave like a student. It reacted. At first, it was subtle. A fluctuation in the electromagnetic spectrum. Then atmospheric distortion. Then movement. Captain Zrath leaned forward. Energy signatures detected on the surface, she said quickly. Rapid activation. Vexthal narrowed his eyes. That is impossible, he said. The island came into focus. And then it changed. The ground shimmered. Not metaphorically. Literally. Like reality peeling back a layer it had been wearing. Structures emerged from beneath the ocean-facing terrain. Not primitive bunkers. Not improvised shelters. But hardened installations. Weapon platforms. Shield emitters. Directed energy arrays. Zratha's voice dropped. Admiral, those are military-grade installations. Vexthal stood slowly. The plasma lances struck, and collided with a barrier that did not exist a moment earlier. A shield lattice. Perfectly calibrated. The impact did not explode. It dispersed. Like water hitting invisible glass. 2 of the plasma beams shattered mid-flight, their energy dissipating into harmless radiation. The third struck the island directly, but instead of vaporizing it, the surface absorbed and redirected the energy into a containment field. The island remained intact. Alive. Armed. Vexthal's claws tightened. Impossible, he said again. But this time it carried weight. Not disbelief. Adjustment. Sensor recalibration, the science officer shouted. The island was masked. Entire installation was cloaked beneath environmental mimicry layers. Zrath stared at the display. There were no readings, she said. Nothing. Not even residual heat signatures. Stealth technology, the officer confirmed. But far beyond standard cloaking systems. Vexthal's gaze sharpened. Reveal the full structure, he ordered. The sensors adjusted. And Earth responded by revealing what had been hidden. The island was not an island. It was a fortress. layered defense grids, subsurface launch tubes, orbital relay beacons disguised as geological formations, energy conduits running beneath ocean floors. And worse, it was only one node. Zrath whispered, "How many more like this exist?" No one answered, because no one knew. Before Vexthal could issue a command, alarms erupted across the bridge. Multiple spatial anomalies detected. Emergent signatures appearing across planetary orbit. Contacts forming, hundreds, no, thousands. The tactical display exploded with red markers. Not random. Coordinated. Structured. They were appearing everywhere. Behind moons. Inside asteroid shadows. Within debris fields. Even in empty orbital lanes previously marked as void. Zrath stepped back from her console. "They were here," she said slowly. "All along." Vexthal's eyes narrowed as the display filled. Human ships. Hundreds. Then thousands. Silent. Cloaked. Waiting. The empty space around Earth was no longer empty. It was occupied. Completely. The science officer's voice cracked slightly. "Admiral, we are detecting propulsion signatures matching advanced fusion and gravitic drive systems." Vexthal turned sharply. "That is not possible," he said. "Their civilization rating is pre-FTL." Zrath swallowed. "Then our intelligence is wrong," she said. A long pause followed. Then another alarm. Additional contacts emerging from planetary shadow zones. Surface-to-orbit launches detected. Mass deployment of fleet assets confirmed. The first human ships fully decloaked. And they were not what anyone expected. Not fragile. Not improvised. Not primitive. They were warships. Real ones. Armored. Structured. Purpose-built. Vexthal stared at the tactical screen as the situation collapsed into clarity. "This was not concealment," he said quietly. "It was preparation." Outside the viewport, Earth remained calm. Still rotating. Still blue. Still quiet. But now the silence had teeth. And for the first time since entering the system, Admiral Vexthal understood a terrifying possibility forming at the edge of his calculations. They had not discovered an unarmed world. They had walked into a trap that had been waiting long before they ever arrived. The first exchange of fire did not resemble war as the Zephyrian Empire understood it. It resembled collapse. Human ships moved first. Not in formation. Not in synchronized fleet geometry. But in scattered, unpredictable bursts across every vector of space around Earth. Captain Zrath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "They're not forming battle lines," she said. Vexthal's gaze remained fixed on the unfolding chaos. "That's because they don't think like a fleet," he replied quietly. A human cruiser broke from orbit and accelerated directly toward a Zephyrian destroyer. No warning. No challenge. No signal. Just movement. "Intercept it," the weapons officer shouted. Plasma fire erupted. The human ship did not evade in a clean arc like trained militaries. It rolled. Dropped. Then split its trajectory into multiple microburn adjustments that made no logical pattern. The plasma missed. The human ship didn't slow. It fired. Not energy beams. Not advanced particle lances. Metal. Dense kinetic slugs accelerated to relativistic speeds. The impact punched straight through the destroyer's shielding lattice as if it did not exist. A breach formed instantly. Then another. Then internal detonation. The Zephyrian destroyer disappeared in a flash of fragmented light. Silence followed for half a second. Then alarms erupted across the bridge. "Destroyer Helix Wing has been lost." Vexthal did not react immediately. He was studying the pattern. "There is no pattern," he said slowly. Zrath frowned. "That is impossible." Another human vessel moved. This one didn't attack directly. It flew past the edge of Zephyrian formation and released a cluster of small drifting objects. "Debris?" the science officer asked. A moment later, the objects detonated. Space erupted into a field of fragmentation mines. Invisible until triggered. Deadly upon contact. A Zephyrian cruiser attempted repositioning and drifted directly into the field. The explosion tore through its outer hull like fabric. "One cruiser down," Zrath whispered. Then another explosion. And another. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a controlled collapse zone. Human ships appeared everywhere. From asteroid shadows. From behind planetary rings. From within sensor blind spots the Zephyrians did not even realize existed. "How many of them are there?" the weapons officer demanded. "Unknown," the science officer replied, voice rising. "They are exceeding initial planetary population estimates for spacecraft production capacity by orders of magnitude." Vexthal's claws tightened. "They were hiding this entire time," he said. Zrath shook her head. "No," she said. "They were waiting." A human fighter group broke formation from a larger vessel. Small, fast, insanely maneuverable. They moved like instinct rather than doctrine. Zephyrian targeting systems struggled to lock onto them. "They're too small," the weapons officer said. "Shield algorithms can't classify them as primary threats fast enough." The fighters struck. One Zephyrian destroyer lost its propulsion instantly. Another had its weapons grid overloaded. A third spun out of control, its bridge severed from command systems. Vexthal finally spoke. "They are exploiting response delay," he said. Zrath looked at him sharply. "That's not doctrine," she said. "No," he replied. "That's behavior." Another transmission cut through the chaos. Human voice. Calm. Almost casual. "Admiral Zephyrian Fleet," it said. "You are entering a restricted defense zone. Disengage or escalation will continue." The bridge crew froze. Because the tone was not threatening. It was factual. As if stating weather conditions. Zrath looked at Vexthal. "They're warning us," she said. Vexthal's expression hardened. "They're measuring us," he corrected. The human ships surged again. And space around Earth became something no Zephyrian tactical simulation had ever prepared them for. Not warfare. Not engagement. But controlled, intelligent chaos designed specifically to dismantle superior doctrine. And for the first time in Zephyrian military history, their enemy was not trying to match their strength. They were trying to erase their certainty. The battle had already stopped being a surprise. Now it became a revelation. One that unfolded in layers, each more destabilizing than the last. The Zephyrian fleet formations, once considered absolute, were now fractured across multiple engagement zones. Ships that had entered Earth's orbit in perfect imperial geometry were drifting, burning, or vanishing into expanding debris fields. On the bridge of the Shadow Sovereign, silence had become heavier than alarms. Captain Zrath spoke first. "We are losing formation integrity across 12 sectors," she said. "Command coordination is degrading." Vexthal did not respond immediately. His eyes were fixed on the sensor net. Because something new was appearing. Not small ships. Not fighters. Not civilian conversions. Large signatures. Deep mass readings. "Admiral," the science officer said slowly. "New contacts emerging from outer system approach vectors." Vexthal's voice dropped. "How many?" A pause. Then, "Hundreds." The tactical display expanded outward. Beyond Earth's orbit. Beyond the Moon. Beyond asteroid belts. Ships were rising into detection range from hidden positions previously marked as empty space. But now they were revealing themselves. And they were not improvised vessels. They were warships, built for sustained combat. Armored hulls with layered defensive plating. Weapon arrays that matched or exceeded Zephyrian output efficiency. Gravitic stabilizers designed for high-acceleration engagement. Zrath stepped back slightly. "These are not civilian conversions," she said. "No," Vexthal agreed quietly. "They are not." Another wave of contacts appeared. Then another. Then another. The system around Earth was filling like a waking predator revealing its full size only after it had already struck. "How did we miss this?" the weapons officer demanded. "Our scans, our long-range probes, there was nothing." The science officer's hands moved rapidly across the console. "They were masked," he said. layered stealth fields across multiple detection spectrums. They weren't just hidden visually, they were erased from predictive modeling. Zrath frowned. Predictive modeling failure, she repeated. The officer nodded. Yes, Captain. Their spatial signatures were designed to appear as natural background noise. We didn't just fail to detect them, we were given false emptiness. Vexthal exhaled slowly. That requires knowledge of our detection systems, he said. A pause. Then, they studied us, he added. The first of the large human warships fully decloaked. And the bridge fell silent again. Because it was not just larger. It was built differently. Not for intimidation. Not for aesthetics. For function. Angular armor plates, designed to deflect plasma rather than absorb it. Distributed weapon ports instead of centralized cannons. Redundant propulsion systems embedded across hull segments. It did not look like a warship designed for dominance. It looked like one designed for survival against overwhelming odds. Zrath swallowed. There are so many of them, she said quietly. Then the system updated again. More contacts. This time from planetary surface launches. Mass accelerations. Hidden underground ports opening across continents. Human ships rising from Earth itself. Vexthal finally turned his head slightly. They built beneath us, he said. The science officer nodded, pale. Yes, Admiral. The tactical display became overwhelming. Hundreds of warships now fully visible. Thousands of smaller support craft. Entire fleet groups forming layered defensive rings around the planet. Not chaotic. Not random. Coordinated. The earlier confusion of human tactics was replaced with something far more dangerous. Structure. The realization hit Zrath first. They were never disorganized, she said. Vexthal's eyes narrowed. No, he agreed. They were compartmentalized. A new transmission opened. Human voice again. Come. Stronger now. No longer uncertain. Zephyrian Fleet, it said. You are now engaging Planetary Defense Network designation Soul Guard Array. You are advised to disengage. Zrath stared at the console. Planetary Defense Network, she whispered. The science officer's voice cracked slightly. That scale, that would imply a unified military doctrine spanning the entire planet. Vexthal's claws tightened. They don't have one government, he said slowly. The transmission continued. We will not repeat warnings, the human voice said. You are inside defended space. Then a pause. A final line. Proceed accordingly. The transmission ended. And for the first time since entering the system, the Zephyrian fleet was no longer the hunter. It was the object being evaluated. The battlefield around Earth was no longer a tactical engagement. It had become an archive of collapsing certainty. Every new scan from the Zephyrian fleet revealed something worse than destruction. Understanding. And understanding, in war, was always fatal. On the Shadow Sovereign's bridge, Admiral Vexthal stood unmoving as the tactical display expanded beyond manageable limits. The human fleet was no longer hidden. It was fully revealed now, layered across orbital zones like a living shield wrapped around the planet. But what disturbed him most was not their numbers. It was their history signature. Cross-reference those hull designs, Vexthal ordered quietly. The science officer hesitated. Admiral, they don't match a single era of construction. Zrath leaned in. What do you mean? The officer swallowed. Some of these ships predate their supposed industrial capability by decades. Others match designs that should only be theoretical. Silence tightened across the bridge. Then Vexthal spoke. They didn't evolve linearly, he said. A pause. They iterated. The display shifted again. Deep archival overlays unlocked automatically from captured signal fragments. Human battle records. Old conflicts. Atmospheric warfare. Orbital skirmishes. Planetary defense simulations run at global scale. Zrath stared at it. They've been fighting, she whispered, before they were in space. The science officer nodded slowly. Yes, Captain. Their entire technological progression is conflict-driven. Vexthal's eyes narrowed. That explains the redundancy, he said. The layered systems. The distributed command structure. Another data feed opened. And this one made the bridge go silent. Corax Empire engagement records. Recovered fragments. Reconstructed battlefields. A full-scale interstellar extinction event mapped in detail. Zrath stepped back. That's not possible, she said. The Corax Empire had dominion over 40 systems. The archive continued anyway. Human ship. Single vessel. Designation: Endeavour-class exploratory craft. 37 crew. And then the collapse sequence. Not of the humans. Of the Corax. Fleet integrity failures cascading across sectors. Command networks breaking under unknown intrusion patterns. Entire battle groups turning on each other. Vexthal watched without blinking. This is not recorded warfare, he said slowly. It's adaptive collapse. The archive expanded further. Images of human adaptation strategies during the incident. Improvised weapons. Structural repurposing. Self-sacrificial attacks designed to maximize damage rather than survival probability. Zrath whispered. They weaponized loss. Vexthal did not correct her. Because she was right. A second archive layer opened automatically. Older. Far older. Council restricted. Terran incident classification seals shattered as the system forced exposure due to proximity relevance. Nethra's voice echoed faintly through the recorded data stream. The humans do not fight like us, she said in the recording. They do not separate war from existence. The projection showed it clearly now. Corax fleet destruction. Not by superior firepower alone, but by persistence. By unpredictability. By willingness to escalate beyond acceptable survival thresholds. Zrath looked at Vexthal. They don't value their ships, she said. Vexthal's answer was quiet. They value the outcome more. The archive then showed something else. Post-Corax era expansion data. Human space infrastructure growth. Colonization across their system. Defensive networks built over centuries. Not expansionist. Fortification-based. Every world. Every moon. Every orbital lane layered with contingency defenses. Zrath frowned. They were never unprepared, she said. No, Vexthal replied. They were never finished preparing. A final layer of data unlocked. Council-level strategic summary. And the words displayed were not commentary. They were warning classification. Subject species, humanity status, active contingency civilization threat profile, nonlinear escalation response recommendation, avoid conflict at all costs. Zrath read it twice. Then again. Her voice lowered. That's not a threat assessment, she said. Vexthal nodded once. It's a confession. Outside the viewport, Earth remained unchanged. Still blue. Still calm. Still orbiting as if unaware of the war happening above it. But now the Zephyrian fleet understood something that no sensor could measure. They had not discovered a primitive world. They had discovered a species that had already survived its own extinction preview, and built everything afterward to ensure it would never happen again. The battle did not end with a final explosion. It ended with absence. Ships that once filled Earth's orbit began to fall back in coordinated retreat patterns, not because they were annihilated, but because every tactical assumption they had brought into the system had collapsed at once. On the bridge of the Shadow Sovereign, Admiral Vexthal watched his fleet dissolve from dominance into survival formation. 400 warships had entered the Sol system believing in certainty. Now fewer than 50 maintained functional cohesion. Full withdrawal order received from forward command clusters, Captain Zrath reported quietly. Vexthal did not respond immediately. His eyes remained on Earth. Still there. Still rotating. Still unchanged. As if nothing significant had occurred above it. A deception, he now understood, not of technology, but of perception. Why are they letting us leave? Zrath asked softly. No one answered at first. Because the question carried something uncomfortable. Mercy. But not mercy as the Zephyrians understood it. Not restraint born of limitation. But restraint born of choice. A new transmission arrived. Earth Defense Command. No longer uncertain. No longer defensive. Controlled. Final. This is Earth, the voice said. You will now withdraw from our system. Vexthel leaned forward slightly. Not in anger. In recognition. You are ordering us, he said quietly. A pause. Then the human voice answered. Yes. No elaboration. No threat display. No emotional escalation. Just certainty. Zrath glanced at him. They could destroy us, she said. Vexthel did not disagree. He had already calculated that. Multiple times. The conclusion remained unchanged. Yes, he said. They could. Another pause. Then the human voice continued. We do not seek expansion. We do not seek your territory. We do not seek your species. A beat. But if you return... The silence that followed was heavier than weapons fire. We will respond accordingly. The transmission ended. No ceremony. No intimidation. Just closure. Across the fleet, damaged Zephyrian vessels began retreating from the system boundary. Slowly at first. Then faster as coordination returned to survival instinct. On the bridge, Zrath finally spoke again. What are they? She asked. Vexthel remained looking at Earth. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, they are not conquerors, he said quietly. Another pause. They are not defenders in the way we understand it either. He tightened his grip on the command rail. They are a species that has already decided the universe will not repeat its mistakes on them. The bridge remained silent. Outside the viewport, Earth grew smaller as the fleet withdrew. Peaceful. Bright. Almost fragile again. But now that illusion had been destroyed permanently. Behind them, the Shadow Sovereign's hull carried the scars of a battle that had never truly been about territory. It had been about assumptions. And humanity had not just survived the invasion. They had rewritten it. In the council chambers far behind them, Ambassador Nethra watched the retreat confirmation scroll across the system-wide display. Her expression did not change. Only her voice, barely audible, broke the silence. They learned, she said. High Chancellor Vorith stood beside her. Yes, he replied. Nethra looked toward the distant star map where Earth remained marked under permanent quarantine protocols. And now, she said softly, the galaxy will learn something else. Vorith did not ask what. Because he already knew. Some species did not expand. Some did not conquer. Some did not even seek peace. They simply ensured survival so completely that the difference between threat and extinction became the same thing. And in the dark between stars, that kind of species was not a participant in galactic history. It was a boundary condition for it.